All right, so just yeah, select whatever replay you'd like to start with. Ooh, lovely portrait picture, by the way, Tobias. Nice.
Oh, that's short.
Yeah. The wall.
I should actually pick Hero Marine, but I like Showtime more. Like the tank.
Yeah, I
So
was
I'd
like,
like to. Sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's a bit traitorous to have Showtime up there and not Hero Marine as a German fan, you know. Though you're Austrian, actually, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Austrian, not German.
This is such a. That's like the first. I'm always making fun because we have quite a few Austrians who hang out in the channel. I'm always telling them they're German is a dumb joke, and this is the one time I've accidentally called an Austrian a German. I'm like, damn it! Normally I do it on purpose. Can you make me the lobby host? You just made me the party leader, I think.
Oops.
So have you had a chance to rage at the slow fields yet on the new maps much?
I I gotta say I almost never played the new maps.
Oh, okay.
Like I've got I believe yesterday and today combined like 10 times Cyber Forest, and I forgot the second. So
Yeah.
I think like 3 times maybe I've played on the new maps at best.
Well, I know that EU ladder, and you're right around the point right now with your MMR, which is probably the ragiest part of the EU ladder, where there are some very, very angry people. So I reckon they're the kind of people who a lot of your opponents probably played the new maps once, lost, and then vetoed them all. So you're probably not having too many players who actually have them unvetoed. Acropolis is quite normal. That's the one that doesn't have any weird stuff on it. Thunderbird's not terrible either. That's the one with like the weird little mineral walls, which really aren't that crazy. And the purple gas, the rich gas, is really not that accessible anyway. It's like in the middle of the map, so you know it's pretty bad base. Excuse me, but definitely the slow field map is the one where yeah, just prepare yourself for that map. A lot of people getting frustrated on it. It's funny though, you know. I just embrace the chaos when I'm on a map like that a little bit.
Yeah, I've played one game against Zerg on that map, and he burrowed like 3 banelings on the first like slow field, and wrecked everything I had.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's like people keep
Because
telling me to try that, and I haven't done it yet. I can't. Yeah.
yeah, the thing is, I was actually thinking of it like myself, and I was well, you could burrow banelings pretty nice there, and then boom, everything was gone.
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
So what build order are you doing here? This is looking like a 2-1-1?
it's a variation of the 2-1-1. I've seen well, a friend, yeah, an old friend playing this. It's a bit more of a commitment, but like with 4 Hellbats and a slightly more delayed third base.
Command center upgrade
Okay, awesome.
complete.
And are we getting
But
those Hellbats after the first two medevacs, or are we building them just
no,
kind
no,
of
no,
one at a time?
just one medivac, and then you move out with 4 Hellions and a medivac, and I
Ah,
believe
okay.
19 Marines.
Yeah, this is a good timing. I like this one. Yeah, this is the latest Hellbat addition to the 2-on-1. Because there
Yeah,
was the really old one where you would swap after the first two medevacs, the factory back over, and you would hit with 4 Hellbats and two more Hellions would rally in. But it would be like with combat shields and with like 30 Marines and 3 medevacs. So it was like a much later. This is like a real quick brutal attack, which is nice.
yeah.
Awesome.
Also, many Zergs can adapt really to it, so I tend to kill a lot of people with it.
Yeah.
Like 3 banelings are not gonna be enough.
Oh
This.
no. Yeah. Yeah, it's something where I think, you know, you kill the first overlord and a lot of people, no one's going overlord speed, right? Or anything like that. So
Yeah,
definitely makes things hard. I do think showing the Hellions is a big mistake. So in this game, he actually had his overlord see your Hellions with your push. So that's something I think you've got to try to hide the Hellions a little bit where possible. Wait for the medevac to come out and then bring your Hellions. So really cool small little adjustment there, which especially once people have seen this build, like the moment they're like, oh yeah, it's a 2-on-1, there's lots of Marines, and then they see the Hellions, they're just immediately going to go like, wah! Like start putting spines down or like, building heaps of banelings and stuff. So I think it would have been, yeah, if we just kind of rally those Hellions at the second barracks at the back, medevac comes down to the high ground, clear the Overlord, and then the other one, and then push across. It could be really nice. Now, obviously, this is such a tight timing. I don't think it'll matter in this game too much, but there's also something on this map. Notice where he put the Overlord? Some people like to put it here. You can spot that by having a Marine on the high ground in your main base.
I was not expecting him to have the Overlord there. I was expecting him to have him like below my second base, which is why I put my Hellions on the gas, like up the gas, so he couldn't spot it with his Overlord over there.
It's rare, but yeah, depending on how often, I can just get in the habit of sending a Marine up there, and you'll see if they're there or not. But likewise, I would, I think it's cool to try and boost that medevac down to the high ground, and then make sure you kill any Overlord up there. So I already have my Marines positioned kind of around the edge, waiting for the medevac, if it is on the normal one where you were expecting it to be, and then that way you don't show the Hellions. This is such a small map, I don't think it matters too much, because you're just like dive across the map, but definitely something we can do. So position Marines to snipe Ovi, then bring Hellions. Yeah, this is pretty tightly executed. So before we look at the fight, as always, let's just very quickly talk about the follow-up. So, you're building quite a few more Marines. Sometimes some people would like to power after this sort of pressure, where they're just like, they don't build Marines at all, they don't build combat shields, and they just kind of go 3cc, double eBay, or something like that. What's your follow-up normally?
I messed up two things in this game, particularly, which is why I picked this replay. But I follow up with 2 barracks, and then 2 eBay and double gas. In this game, I built 2 eBay and then double barracks, but it's not big of a deal. And like the third base.
So the order normally, did you say it's the 2 gas first?
No, it's third base, double barracks, double eBay, and then double gas.
Third CC, double racks, double gas, double eBay.
And
then the 5th racks, just as the final.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. All right, awesome. Yeah, I might even go the gas and the eBay before the extra barracks, but we'll see how it works out. As long as you've got that order in your head, that's pretty nice.
Yeah. Just don't look at this engagement like.
Oh no!
The one moment I wasn't looking.
Oh, whoops! Sorry, misclick.
This is pretty much the worst, like one of the worst games. So I don't know how to play this out when I'm behind.
Yeah. So let's focus on this engage for a sec, and let's kind of come up with some rules for it. So what we did was we chased the queens, but they ran away and they bought quite a bit of time, and then we decided to click on the hatch at the 3rd here. And so we end up not really getting a lot of damage, right? Now, even if we were watching here, this was a really bad spot. Like, we would have gone down there. Obviously, we'd spread the Marines, maybe pick 8 up and boost out it, and at least save 8 Marines. But we were always going to get crushed with the queens coming from both sides and that amount of Ling Bane. Like, we were always going to get crushed by this army, right?
Sadly.
So, every second matters. So I've been watching from your vision, but I have a hunch if we went into the natural, since that's where we seem to be aiming our attack for, and we stayed focused on that, we would have forced the fight before many banelings were done. So let's go back, let's take a look, let's go to everyone's camera. And those banelings, they're not too far off. They would finish pretty soon. And if you do prefer to go to the 3rd, that's fine. On this map, I'm okay with you of just having moved through the middle of the map, right? And if the 3rd was always your target, I'm okay with that. If these banelings weren't morphed, obviously, like, the natural's usually just the more devastating target. But I definitely think clicking a hatchery is just never my choice because it's so high risk, right? You can do 1,000 hit points of damage and it's worth nothing if you don't get the last 500 hit points.
Yeah.
So I would have liked us to go for the drones here. Obviously, it's a little scary because, well, what if they only have Zerglings and then we like spread our units out a little bit or something, and then like they actually clean us up with just Lings, where if we stayed in a ball, it would have been nice. Well, you know, this is why some people do like to drop a scan. I mean, in this particular angle, you know what? Let's go back. Actually, let's follow my initial hunch. Let's follow this idea of what if we push into the natural. So we didn't chase those queens. Like, obviously, maybe we chase like a tiny bit here, but then we're like, oh, he's running, and we just like keep going into that natural. I think it would be really cool if we just kind of wiggled our way through those Evo chambers. They're making it a little bit more cramped than we would like. But like, if we manage to get through to the other side of the mineral line, kind of spread our units out a little bit, you know, we're right in an area where they kind of need to deal with the push straight away. So I feel like definitely like getting into a drone line quicker when we find no defense, maybe dropping a scan ahead of this just to like get a general idea of what we're going into as well, maybe as a standard part of the push. So if you do see 12 Banelings and 40 Zerglings, like you just turn around and go home, right? You don't even commit. I like that idea though, where we have like an exact structure of us like committing harder in a consistent way. That's usually going to work out well for us. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as I said, this is pretty much the worst game I've had with this opening. Like, ow. But generally speaking, I tend to go for the drone line at the third base, especially if I see like this many drones. I was like, well, if I see 16 drones-ish, he's probably not going to have much units, is what usually my opponents have. And then I click the hatchery and kill it with no real fight, which was obviously not the case.
Right. So you kind of go off that drone count a little bit on the third, and that gives you an idea here of what you're going into to some extent. Yeah, so obviously in this case we see that was a lot of drones, but if we look around we can see there's not a lot of gas mining, and the natural's ever so slightly undersaturated as well. And our opponent had done a pretty nice job of droning, you know, being on the edge of greed. But anyways, so fair enough. So what do you think though? Okay, so a lot of the time you do just click the hatch down and you get that, and that's nice. And what do you think about going for the drones instead? You don't necessarily need to spread your units out. You could still, you know, kind of keep your units quite close together, but get them in that mineral line. And then if you see banelings coming, kind of spread them. But then you've got like, say you wedge between the gases and the hatch, you could, you know, spread your units deeper into the mineral line, and you'd have a few Hellbats and Marines, almost like a little wall in between the hatchery and the gas geysers, protecting the rest of your unit, saying, hey, you have to blow up on us to get through to the other guys to some extent, right? I just like the idea of going for drones always because as we said, you know, hatcheries are such a all or nothing thing where if you get in here, like the amount of raw damage you've done to this hatchery is 24 drone kills, or 23 to be exact, because you've done 1,150 hit points. Sorry, that's like 28 drones worth of hit points. But then you've also got an armor on the hatchery. So you've done like 35 drones of hit points worth of damage. Now, obviously, the drones are going to run around a little bit. They're a bit harder to get. They're not just going to sit there right in front of your Marines and Hellbats like a hatchery does. But it's just one of those things where, you know, if you killed all the drones on this third but lost all your units, it wouldn't really be the end of the world, right? Like, it wouldn't necessarily be the thing you're happiest with. But, I mean, if you killed 14 drones here, knocked him down to 34 drones to your 44 SCVs, yeah, he'll rebuild pretty quick. But that's like a much better position than this. And that's assuming you still just get completely killed by the Lingbane, which we don't want to have happen, right? That's not part of the plan. But I just feel like it's kind of locking in some more damage going for the drones. So, I mean, do you reckon maybe just kind of do the same pattern, always go for the third, but go towards the drones a little bit more? Do you think maybe if you're like this and you haven't seen their army, you should drop a scan behind the army? What do you reckon sounds kind of most appealing to you? I definitely think we should try to prioritize the drones, but as always, it's kind of like, you know, what do you think we could do here as a general structure to try and get a bit more damage if these hatcheries say, and obviously if you keep getting the hatch every game, you can keep doing it, right? But if you start having the hatch get saved 20, 40%, 50% of the time, like we really need to change up the pattern, right? So it's always good to have this as like another different possibility for our push priority. So what do you reckon is something that appeals to you as a priority?
I mean, I can stutter step into the mineral line and then it's just a click and then whatever is there will get killed. The problem is I don't want to focus too much on this Marine and like get this production going. Otherwise, I like he's gonna kill off my stuff eventually, and then I have like what 10 Marines at home, and then he's gonna aim with me. This is what happened to me like when I started playing this, like the original 2-1-1 way ago. So I'm kind of afraid to micro these units too much. But it's not that big of a deal if I might like start a step into a line and then leave it there
Yeah.
for a bit.
Yeah, we still don't want to. I think it's good you've got that in your head, that idea of like, we don't want to stare at this for 5 minutes, every second that goes by, like, because at this point we've already been looking at the fight for 20 seconds, right? So it's very understandable that you looked away, you just glance back as the banelings hit, and you're like, shit, damn it.
Yeah.
But that also brings us to the idea of a scan to know what's going on. It's also why, I do like pushing into the natural sometimes, because with a lot of pushes where I'm like, okay, like gonna push straight up into the natural, and then immediately like finds their army usually as quickly as possible, and I kind of like know what's there. I hate this feeling of like you're going in and the Zerg's like, you're in their base and the Zerg still hasn't shown what he's got, and you're like, can you can you show me like how much stuff is about to pop out? Like, should I really be microing my heart out, or is this about to get stomped down? Should I pull it back? Should I just move the units at the drones and then go back and macro, knowing everything's going to die? So it's kind of hard. And this is why I like this idea of like, I'm like, should we always have a scan and just always scan to try and find the army while we're going in? Like, should that be part of our push? I'm just going to write it down as an option here. And I think I'd like you to try that if sometimes. They're like, okay, always scan with push. Try this for some games. Check their army, and that can be a nice thing to do. We can also try hitting natural every game, because that's much more of a devastating move. You will win more games outright with that move, but also obviously you are going into the heart of their defense a little bit more as well. So sometimes you will get bopped a little bit more. But that's cool. So in terms of your follow-up now, I just wanted to talk there about the priorities, because I think it's so useful for us to just think about like, okay, what's our structure for what we're going for? So I think the main thing we've really focused on there is just getting you to prioritize drones over hatchery. I think is going to give you, more reliable value most of the time. So in terms of your follow-up, we've written it down here, and it's third CC, double racks, double gas, double eBay. You did say you accidentally went the eBays before the gas this game. Fair enough. Do you control group your engineering bays?
No, never.
Okay. I really dislike that you put your engineering bays down in different positions.
Yeah,
That's
I dislike it.
Yeah, I'm like, that's gross. If you hotkey them, it doesn't matter. But if they're not hotkeyed, it's like, ugh. Because like I hotkey mine as well, but I often just click on them in my base when I camera zoom to my main base. So if I accidentally put them in different spots, it just wastes so much APM.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other hand, oh wait, let's take a look as well at your macro, because I think there was a little bit of panic macro there. Because I think you didn't queue your workers back to mine after all of those structures. So even though, yeah, the CCSCV didn't queue back, neither did the engineering bay in the main or the engineering bay in the natural. Obviously the gas ones don't matter. Okay, yeah. Alright, that's interesting. So definitely like we could try and be like a little bit calmer, I guess, with that. I love the factory and the starport lift, by the way, to get those extra barracks on the reactors. Nice. Very, very good. That was clearly an organized move you've done many times. That looked very clean.
Yeah. I think I'm these back.
Okay.
Yeah, the natural one goes, and the main one, they go both. The eBay ones.
So you did actually go barracks after the gas and the eBays, yeah, right? In this game? And I think that's the better way to do it. So
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think you want to get your upgrades started really quickly, because your upgrades are like never going to be all that fast. So you've already got 2 barracks that are pumping units kind of more or less non-stop, and I think that could be really big. Because
it might work. I don't know. I feel like I remember when I started this, I feel like having the production earlier, a little bit earlier, helped with like counterattacks. Like imagine he has like 15 banelings morphing in front of my door.
Yeah. Well,
Then it's
I think maybe we're a little bit too paranoid about that.
yeah,
Because
probably
you
yeah.
do have a wall off and you can stim these Marines. And you've done a pretty brutal timing attack, and don't get me wrong, like
Add-on complete.
I'm about to suggest you be even
Research
greedier
complete.
afterwards as well. So that's like another thing here. I'm about to suggest that you power and you actually have like 3 to 5 less Marines here right now at your natural. Just so that it's easier for you to get the third command center, the engineering bays, and this whole transition going earlier. Because if you cut Marines, and this is just always an option, right? So remember, everything's flexible. So that this is always like a good little thing we can remember. Is so you move out at like 450 or something like that. And right at this point, we've got all the units that are going to be in our push, right? This is all of our units. Okay, cool. We're going to raise that depot in a second, and that's the push, right? We're done. We're done with this push, okay? I think you even raised the
Yeah.
depot.
Yeah, I
Research complete.
get it. I hope it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if instead of making combat shields, because that's not really a high importance upgrade, like we're not going to do an actual push in the next 80 seconds, probably not in the next 3 minutes after this one, right? So we don't actually need to start combat shields for several minutes, even though it helps us defensively, right? But it's like a corner we can cut. Same thing with like, oh, we've got 1 or 2 Marines behind our wall. That'll stop a few Zerglings from counterattacking us. And if we didn't have these extra 1, 2, 3, 4 Marines you've got queued up and combat shields, 4 Marines combat shields, that's 300 minerals plus the 300 minerals you've got in the bank. That means you would already have enough money right now to go command center, double gas, and then probably like as you're committing in here, you'd probably like as you're going in like here, you'd have enough money for the double eBay as well. So it's like most of your transitions already started, and then you can kind of afford to put a bit more APM into the pressure rather than being like, oh shit, I'm hitting, X amount of money and I need to go throw down that CC just as I'm entering creep, and then I need to go back a second later and throw down engineering bays, and I'm looking back at my army and I'm throwing down another engineering bay. So I'd really like us to batch up those items as much as possible, and this is actually a really good concept which we can kind of carry across to your other builds a little bit as well, right? So try to focus on batching your transition. I want you to try this for a few games, and I think you'll really like it. Outside of the one game where the guy does hit you with a 20 Baneling bust, and we can also have a siege tank is another thing we can potentially do there, but we'll talk about that in a sec as a bit of safety. So try to focus on batching your transition into one solid chunk of organized APM, right? And we're gonna try to do less. So at the moment, you're doing the thing where you're trying to play a little bit too much like Maru, I would say. And it's good to do this sometimes. But like you were bouncing between your army and your macro, and I think you did that 3 times in this 20-second window of you entering creep. And I'm just like, I would always try to like instead just say, so watching this one more time, let's try and like just have queued up a few extra SCVs, have already dropped down some structures if possible, and just be focusing on this army for 20 seconds. Because now we're going to jump home again in a second, throw down an engineering bay. We're then going to jump back to our army. We're then going to jump home and jump in another engineering bay.
Add-on.
And then I lose. Yeah,
And we lose
I
our
get the
units
idea.
anyway. Yeah. And the thing
I
is,
mean,
you normally don't lose these units, but the reason in most of your games is because those SCVs aren't rallied back to the minerals. So basically what I feel is like, I talked earlier about, I feel like we should be going for the drones and getting more damage. So I feel like we're not getting as much priority out of our units as possible at the moment, but we're also not as organized with our macro as possible. And like you mentioned, you were doing things out of your normal order. So even though I prefer this order, and I think you should probably stick to the faster, upgrades and gases before the barracks, I think obviously it's always, as a general rule, you want to follow your normal order, and you're very good at that normally. You're a really organized Terran player. So I think it would actually be like really beneficial to kind of do that little powering. So one solid chunk of organized APM. So basically, as we move out, cut Marine production and delay shields. Get most of your transition done before you hit creep. So what does that mean? It means 3cc, double eBay, double gas, queue up extra SCVs, and resume marine production. Micro for 30 seconds straight, you know, no looking at home. No looking at home. Then jump home once your attack is held, or, you know, if the units are killing so much stuff, you just move them and let them die. Basically, you just jump home at the end of the 30 seconds or when your units die, and, you know, and pick up your macro, right? Which would probably usually take the form of starting upgrades, swapping, adding the barracks, because we haven't added those yet, adding 3 racks, add-ons, etc. Yeah. So I think that would just be really cool, because it would put us in a position where, while we are technically being a bit greedier, it allows us to batch those actions, where you can very cleanly queue up all the SCVs back to minerals. You can do it all at once while you're moving across the map, and it's just a little bit calmer and a bit more organized, and it's going to make it easier to focus on one thing than the other thing. The other one is definitely the counterattack, and you mentioned it before, and you're even kind of a little bit worried about that counterattack to the point where you're delaying your upgrades, which I think means your 2/2 is going to be hitting very late in this game. So I was wondering, you've gone for a reactor automatically on the factory. Do you always play Widow Mines, or do you want to play like siege tanks sometimes as well if it's like Hydralisks?
No, if I see Hydralisk, I switch to siege tanks, but as of recent, many people play Mutas again, or just pure Lingbane, which I feel like Widow Mines are a bit more mobile.
Add-on complete.
Yes,
More
they
flexible,
definitely are.
I guess.
Okay, cool. Well, I obviously, like, you know, I like the idea of the tank for safety, because it just gives us so much survival against every crazy counterattack, right? Like, it's just
Right.
you know, a single tank shot, and they're like, well, I'm not committing. You know, like, people just don't want to commit into a siege tank on the high ground. It's so good, right? So safety tank as standard could be a really nice part of the build as well, where we kind of just go, rather than building a reactor, I always build a tech lab and I always build a siege tank. And that's going to get me. Now, so safety tank as standard, let's consider this as an option. This is not me telling you to do this. It never is. It's always me outlining options, right? So what does a safety tank achieve? Safety against all busts. Easier transition versus Hydra play. Hydra or Roach play, right? So basically, what you can do is you can say, well, let's take the percentage of games you experience a counter bust, and the percentage of games you experience either Lingbane Hydra or like Roach-based play. Basically, those are the 2 games where you would much rather have opened up with a tank immediately, blindly, without even knowing what was happening, right? So if that ends up anywhere near 50%, I reckon it's, or definitely above 50%, it immediately becomes just the better way to play, right? If it's above 50%. If it's like way below 50%, everyone's playing just Lingbane Muta. There's not that many busts going on as well. You're just like, okay, we'll stick with what you're doing with the Widow Mines, and you should be fine. Especially if you get like 2 Widow Mines out before that bust hits, they can obviously shut down a bust pretty hard as well. It's just the reactor takes longer to build, and it's, as we've seen, not as reliable as a siege tank, where 2 Widow Mines can destroy a Lingbane push, or they can kill 4 Zerglings, depending on a little bit of chance and a little bit of our micro attention. Yeah. So just kind of pay attention, I guess, to your percentages and what you're facing, and you can kind of see what works, what doesn't. I like the safety tank, though, because I think it allows the rest of your build to be easier, executed at a lower level, and frees up your actions, because you're quite a mechanical player. You know, you're pretty fast, you're good at, like, on-the-ball feelings. So I think if we can take some of the stress out of trying to multi-manage so many things, you'll just naturally have a bit more creative freedom for microing those units really nicely. Like that engage we just saw with the Widow Mine bait and the Marine pickup, that just looked like really flawless control. Like you've done it many times before, and we want to just free you up to have that stuff happening more and more. And I think it'll work out. So any thoughts on all of that? You reckon you'll try out the safety tank follow-up, or?
I could try out a safety tank. I mean, it's... how do I describe it the best? Like if I want to try and hit timings with Widow Mines, like let's say eight Widow Mines, and then like push creep back and thing. But with I guess it's fine. I can
You'll
definitely take a look at it.
You'll end up, you know, a little bit behind on the Widow Mines for sure. So it's, you know, there's always a give and take there. Your upgrades are going to be faster, and your transition should be smoother though, with this whole kind of batching and everything as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's why the percentage analysis is really important. Just start with the siege tank and see how you go.
Yeah.
It's interesting that people are playing mutas. Like, this map is pretty bad for muta play in my opinion. I've seen some top pros doing it here as well, and I think it's got good space on the edges, but it's dangerous for the Zerg, man. It's so dangerous. So many times where the mutas end up having to commit to the fight just to hold on. But yeah, a lot of people are enjoying mutas again, which is cool. I mean, patterns aren't usually
Research
based off any reason, right? It's just a pro gamer everyone likes, does a thing, and everyone decides that's a good thing to do. Again, but yeah, just curious to see so many people playing mutas at the moment. So but yeah, this was pretty good here. Are we
No.
about to get game-ending Widow Mine shots? No.
No. I was right there. I was tilted already, so I was.
Okay.
Fuck me.
Yeah,
There was a run by my third base. And thing.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Also, I forgot
you were
the-
doing all right still, weren't you? Though I think you were still in that game.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I could have still like fought for the game, but he had Hive on the way, and I forgot my upgrade, and then I was like, no barracks, no money for barracks.
Yeah, I think a good thing to remember is when your opponents are against mutas, you really aren't in as much of a rush. Like, their hive tech always ends up a lot slower. So I do think you are overcommitting here. Like, this push here is the sort of push against a Hydra player who has these many units. Sometimes it can be really nice to get on top of the Hydras, but against Mutiling Bane, generally it's not a good idea to keep pushing with such small numbers, because your power really grows as the numbers grow. Like this little follow-up push here is very weak, for instance, right? If we wait for more Marines, Widow Mines are good, but Widow Mines in small numbers, constantly pushing like this, only works if our opponent just is like too stressed and starts not looking. The moment we don't have the firepower to support them, our opponent has all the freedom in the world to run straight past them or spread and, you know, all that sort of stuff. We did get run by it on the third. We didn't have a wall off, so that's actually a good point, right? We should have had those depots walling off that third base. Makes a big difference. Something I try to remind myself to always do in this matchup. I didn't do it for like the first year and a half of playing Terran. And then I was like, I'm done with this. I'm like, there's too many Lings that have won games against me, man. Do you find you normally build the wall off at the third, or?
Depends on the map. Like on this map, I have to like. I locate my camera location on the center, like the base is on the center, and then I have to move the camera to build the wall in, for example. And then I dislike it, so I build it like here, 3 depots, and then like going and borrow a Widow Mine or something.
Right. Yeah,
But-
I definitely think you can still do that if you want to be like, well, I don't want to move my base, but you should still be building at least a wall to the edge, right? Even if you go to everyone's camera,
Yeah.
Can you see where I'm signaling? You kind of go like, bam, like, you know, from there. So you're at least cutting off the mineral line, at least on that bottom side or something. And then you can have like a bunker and a Widow Mine or something, you know, and that can be pretty good.
Like
And, I mean,
these two
yeah.
these 2 depots at the top like should be at the bottom, like one more to the right and one below, and then it's fine. Maybe a bunker behind the Widow Mine, and then it's perfectly safe.
Yeah. With the Widow Mine, I would also put that down the ramp, because I think that just gives you so much more warning then. You know, seeing if it's a gigantic Lingbane counterattack is really important. And you'll often catch your opponent's units kind of balling up before they go in if you're a bit further out. So I feel like the single drilling Widow Mine being a little bit further out sometimes is just like such good warning and very good for wearing down your opponents as they're coming in.
Absolutely, yeah. Also notice how many of my CVs almost died. Fire.
Yes, that's
That's 9 SCVs.
yeah. Yeah, all within one hit of death. But yeah, I think definitely against mutas, just kind of remember that you can still win no matter what. Like, muta players generally, even though they should be able to still have a decently timed hive and stuff, we see like the resources in this game very common for a muta player. The hive being very late, very common for a muta player, especially if you ever see them get that dumb muta count. You know, You know, they're like,
Yeah.
I am gonna run through your bases with 40 Mutalisks. Like the moment I see someone go above 20 mutas, I immediately like switch gears as a Terran, and I play way more like just slow and defensively and very careful with setting up my army, because I know that's the sort of Zerg who's gonna try and just jump banelings on me when I'm not looking, who's gonna try and dive mutas through my bases to get momentum. And I know that I've usually got way more time, and that's when I start scanning the hive as well a little bit once in a while, where I'm like, okay, I'm being so slow, and like, you know, the instincts of playing against a Ling Bane player who's going Ling Bane Pure or Ling Bane Hydra and going fast Broods or fast Ultras kicks in. I'm like, oh, and I get that urge to just pick everything up and move across the map, and then I scan, and I'm like, wait, the hive hasn't even started. Sometimes like 15 minutes into the game, and I'm this guy never makes a hive. I'm like, just play really slow. Don't let him get in my worker lines. Don't let him catch my army clumped up, and I know I'll win the game. So this guy was not quite like that. This was like a middle ground Zerg where he was doing a lot of fighting in the mid game, but he was still getting the hive. But I think you had more time than you realized, and you had such great Widowmine production that it would have been awesome. So you did go for a 4th base here before extra barracks. Definitely a big macro follow-up. Something I like to do is go for the 6th and 7th barracks and get a few more Marauders in there first, especially with the Widowmine style, because I feel like when you get like 7 Marauders in front with shells, at least 20 Marines, but preferably 40 or 50 Marines behind that, and 8+ Widowmines, I think your army just becomes the scariest thing ever for the Zerg to fight against. I think that's something which we can do. So I just want to write a few notes on that really quickly, and we'll hop out of this replay. We can look at another one. And the final thing is Thors. What about adding a Thor, since you do have a tech lab factor? I feel like 1 Thor in your army can be kind of nice. What do you think of that?
Against the muta player?
Yeah.
I did that. Just Thors are really slow, and they're easy to get picked off. The issue I'm having. So I find myself having the Thor like in the middle of the map, and after the fight is done, Thor is showing up and dies, or YOLO's in because I won the fight anyways. But I like if I go to late game, I build one. Like late game, when ultras hit the field and like broodlords hit the field, you need them anyways, because ghosts are like too micro intensive for me.
What if your opponent has 20 Mutalisks plus? Like that game, you kept his muta count pretty low. You were keeping the fight small. There was never a point where there was a large muta count, so I'm totally fine with no Thors. But if there are 20 mutas plus flying around, your opponent's going really heavy, do you go for an early Thor then?
Early. I mean, yeah. If I see like like an unusual muta count, like 20, 30 mutas or whatever, like then probably, yeah. It's not bad to have something killing the mutas, because if you kill the mutas, it's probably game ending, right?
Absolutely. Well, it's 100% necessary as well. Like if they're going that heavy on the mutas, like you got to build a Thor. It's such a game changer. Like the mutas just aren't useful in a front-on fight at all anymore. Like they can't clump up, they can't pick off units. They've just got to fly around in their stupid magic box formation. They're already a pretty terrible, direct combat unit. It's their mobility and their ability to pick stuff off from the edges that's powerful. So that's really big. So remember to wall off third base leavers even as close to the base. What was I talking about other than that? I was saying, shift gears versus muta players. And don't be afraid to turtle up more. To turtle up / bide your time and wait for a bigger army. Because remember, what is the dream? What is the dream? 180 supply plus fights pre-hive. Just disgustingly bad for the Ling Bane player. They need to make so many Banelings to compensate for how trash Ling Bane Muta is in a gigantic fight. Disgustingly good for Terran, right? So if we have 8+ mines, 10 Marauders up front, or let's say 8+ Marauders up front, a Thor, Marines spread behind it all, a lot of dead Zerg if they don't have Hive. Like, they will struggle so hard. You don't need an upgrade lead or anything like that. So it's just one of these things where, yeah, there's games I've played against people who are like, I'm like, this Terran's not pushing. He's letting me cover the map with creep. And then, like, they just don't care about creep and they just, like, push there. I'm like, what the fuck? And it's like, they just got such a good spread, of a consistent move through of Marine Marauder Mine. And I'm like, oh my God, it's impossible to kill with Ling Bane Muta. if they wait for a big enough army. Just the way all the range damage complements each other, and the Marauders form these like semi-walls and these little blockers essentially, and the Marine damage is insane. So definitely just good to remember that. Scan Lair for Hive, and just hit pre-Broodlord, or as Ultras are barely popping out, you know, no upgrades yet, right? You just got to make sure that's like obviously the thing, right? You can't build up to a maxed army, sit there for another 2 minutes, wait for them to have broods. But it's just important to remember that you have more time to pull back and wait. You have a lot more time to wait with those pushes, and you can definitely shift gears and say, wait a second, this guy's probably more of an ambush-focused player. Let's be a bit more flexible, and let's just give myself a little bit more time. Make sure you're not committing with those really small armies, and make sure your Widow Mines always have support, because Widow Mines are so game-changing if they have enough Marines and Marauders with them. But whenever they're caught on their own, or you're in a situation where your Marines kind of have to spend all their time running away because they're not set up enough to gun down the Banelings, that's when we see, obviously, all your Widow Mines start dealing friendly fire. They start hitting individual Zerglings that are spread across from the pack, because you don't have anything to gun down the enemy units and force them to clump up, right? Marine Marauder forces them to clump. That's what allows the Widow Mines to actually get the big damage. So there's got to be that nice complementary setup. We've got to get the balance quite right. So, awesome. I think we've got like 1,000 little notes there of little things you can adjust and change, little things to focus on, experiment with. Do you want to look at another TvZ, a TvP, TvT? What should we look at?
No, I think TvZ, like the general idea is fine. I just needed some tips for the execution. If you remember the first, I think it was the first session. TvZ, I'm above people I play most of the time. Fine.
Awesome. So
what
are
I'm
we
having the
look at now?
TvT, if it's possible.
Yeah, host up. I've made you the party leader, so let's go straight into a replay.
I'm really lacking on a plan, especially against Mech in TvT. Like I've got an idea of the opening, but I play, I think, too defensive. Like I almost never push out.
Right.
Because breaking another player, especially a Mech player with bio, is really tough, I think.
Do you try to go for air control, or do you just go for like a mass bio overwhelming sort of style?
No, I even go like I play very, very safe, like a 1-base, 1-1-1 into expansion, like pull workers out of gas and get the base after the factory. And then double Raven, double Viking production, up to like 6, depending on what I see.
But once you see it's Mech, what's your go-to? Are you trying to win the air war, or are you just still playing completely standard? You don't change anything?
Like I go to 4 medivacs maybe, and then I switch to Viking production. Keep building Vikings.
Okay, all right. So yeah, you're probably basically stuck too much in your standard gear, which is not what we want. But with a few small changes, I think you'll be doing way better against this, which will be awesome. So we did 2 Reaper and a Hellion. This specific opening, you do need to be very, very wary, because you didn't scout until those units moved across the map. If your opponent goes for one of these reacted Hellion openings, it is kind of scary if they just run across the map with their first 6 Hellions, because they will not only kill your units for free, but they can jump on top of a Cyclone. As we see here, 2 Reapers and a Hellion, or 2 Hellions and a Reaper, doesn't do that well, but if they have 4 or 5 Hellions, that Cyclone kills 1 unit and it dies, right? And then they're in there killing your natural SCVs until your siege tank comes out, and then you're quite far behind. So be wary. I don't know where it is on your MMR, but on NA at the moment, almost all of my regular TvT opponents, they're all like, Reactor Hellion is their go-to. So just keep your eyes out for that. This is obviously much later Hellions. I don't know what this Banshee Hellion attack is. That's fucking random.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I was talking about. That was shit. That you're very good against. But yeah, definitely like just the ability to lose those units. Just be a little bit wary of that. As well as the 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion would be very good against what you're doing. So just keep your eyes out for that. Just a little warning. Do you have problems with those on ladder at all, or?
The problem is, like, I've stopped playing after like February, March actively because of my work. And then when I came back, like in May, this build popped up and I never saw this before. And once in a while I see this, but most people play like him mainly.
That's
So
that's
they
yeah. So you're still normally okay with your opening then, as long
Yeah,
as you're
because
okay with it. I wouldn't adjust anything, honestly. It's
I don't
just,
I don't
yeah.
I haven't seen the reacted Hellion build, like a proper reacted Hellion build yet.
And likewise, same thing with the 3 Reaper 2 Hellion. It'll be just as good against you. It's funny because 3 Reaper 2 Hellion beats your build. Like, they get in and do too much damage because they'll crush your 1 Reaper and 2 Hellions. or 2 Reapers and 1 Hellion, sorry. But then the Reactor Hellion build is like an even more commitment. But like, you can do it off a defensive opening, right? So people were like doing 3 Reaper 2 Hellion. So people said, wait, I can expand. I can do just a Reaper expand, but then I can get the Reacted Hellions out quick enough to just jump on top of that 3 Reaper 2 Hellion if they poke into my natural, and I can crush them, right? So it's like funny, there's been this like escalation through the meta, and you know, some people now like, wow, people are going reacted Hellions, like, I'm just going to expand and build a bunker on the low ground and just put a marine in it and just like go straight to the Raven and stuff. So there's always the TvT opening meta game. Because your opening, you know, is kind of the old school escalation where people are like, oh, 2 Reapers and a Hellion can actually do really good damage. Just keep in mind that at some point you might start playing people who are doing a bit more of a even more commitment, and they might start taking you out a bit. So, looking at your build here, you've kind of gone into the third. You've got a 4th CC. You do have 5 barracks, and you've gone into 3 starports. We've gone 1-1. We haven't started 2-2. So we've got a good-sized bio army with a mix of marauders in there. We've shut down his pressure early on. And we're going to kind of, okay. We scan, we see an opening. Siege. Oh, a little bit late on your siege up. Where's the auto turret spam? Oh no, we're going to lose all our ravens before we use abilities. No! That was actually a really good angle.
Yeah, I know. But I got tilted, and B, I know I didn't have to leave the game, but I was like, what do I do? Like, I see Thors, so Vikings don't work. And Liberators probably not really that well. I see a bunch of tanks. I just lose everything I have. What do I do?
It definitely was a not a good fight. You can still actually take on Thors with ranged Liberators, but you can't siege on top of them, right? They've got to come to you, kind of thing. The way it works is especially because you can stack your Liberators like zones on top of each other. You can edge forward with tank Liberator, and it's better than Thors or Cyclones on the ground. Thors are like, they're very good at stopping like 1 Liberator or something like that. But like they don't do that well against tanks. Tanks just have better range, and against your Liberators. But let's focus on this engagement here. So you scanned, you saw the army, you scanned again. Interference Matrix would have been pretty damn nice here as well. And just sieging all your tanks. Like, all you need to do is get between a base and siege the tanks. And we didn't click on that tank on the left with our bio either, so you can see we just kind of got a little bit excited here. The thing is, this push wasn't really something we should have been looking for that much damage, because you didn't commit that much to it. Your bio force was pretty small. You went like a really fast 4th command center here. So like, if we just got a siege up in range of the mineral line and just sat there and made him attack into us and take a bad fight, like, that would have been more than we really would have normally hoped for. But yeah, if we were just able to siege up there, kill that siege tank, and then as he moved forward, spam auto turrets or interference matrices, you know, just take a good fight, would have been nice. But it's actually more important to even be super focused on what we're doing. So let's talk a little bit about looking at a VOD of one of your favorite German players who we were talking about before, Hero Marine. So, Hero Marine, Kaiser.
I was not expecting to get into this position anyways. Like, I was expecting to see 3 siege tanks there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really needed a good replay to show off my general idea in TvT. So
well, the thing is, you're actually kind of doing the right thing, but you really need ranged libs as well. You can't go unupgraded libs. You went triple reactor. And I really like always showing this VOD. So this is an all races matchup. Let me find the right game. I talk about this game a lot because this is the game which changed my perception of just how much you can adjust versus Mech. And it was actually Killer Zur, I believe. if I remember
Keller's.
correctly. Was it him or Hero Marine? I'm trying to remember. I think it was Hero Marine, actually. I'm trying to remember. One of them. So go to 28 minutes in the VOD. Or 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes. So it's a game on Acid Plant. And yes, yeah. Okay, so it was Hero Marine was playing Mech, right? This was with the older Cyclone, but it's essentially pretty much the same situation, right?
Yeah.
So what's really cool here is Kellezer realizes its Mech very early, is in some quite shitty positions, either down in supply or like equal in supply, down in economy, or at best equal in economy, many points in this game. And he wins it back by being incredibly focused on his strategic advantage. So what was really cool about this game is I thought, taking air control off mech's pretty important. And Kellezer said, no, it's fucking important, pig. He said this telepathically to me while he was playing, and he said, this is just, so important. And what you're going to notice here, I'll skim to like about 8 minutes 30 game timer. You're going to notice that Kellezer stays on single engineering bay upgrades and it doesn't even add add-ons on his 4th and 5th barracks. And he immediately starts adding extra starports. He's like, I don't even need to finish my 5 barracks production or get into my 2nd engineering bay. He's like, all that's going to matter in this game is having control of the skies. He's like, having an extra armor upgrade on my bio, it's not going to change anything against tanks and Hellbats or whatever. He's like, I just need to have enough Vikings to win the air battle and enough Liberators to mess shit up. So he gets the 2nd starport, and I think he gets a 3rd starport very early as well, and just kind of goes full throttle into that air battle. And it's so awesome because he does like get wrecked in 1 or 2 fights at some points, and then like just turns it around with this air control and these libs just coming in such numbers that Hero Marine can't deal with it. And it's because he's just putting all of his gas in that direction from very early on. So really, really cool video to kind of just show how focused you can be. And it's good because it reminded me a lot of like how important your strategic focus is, right? Strategy games are all about have a focus, commit to it to leverage that advantage. And Kellezer is a player who like takes that to the next level a lot of the time, where he'll put all of his focus on this one advantage and use that so damn well to try and win. And that's a really good kind of learning experience for us as non-pro gamers who are learning from these guys. So I think for me, what I really like, and I rarely do it quite as decisively as Kellezer did here, and he might have only done it quite as focused. Like he might have added a few more barracks production or a 2nd eBay if he had the money, if he was ahead, but I think he knew he was behind economically in this game, which is why he did it this way. So I really like this. Focus super hard on the air or super hard on the ground, right? That's the big thing. So how I used to fight against Mech, and I still like it against some players, especially against like an Avillo-flavored Mech player who's like, I'm going to build Widow Mines and Thors and Vikings and Ravens and have 3 tanks with no upgrades on the ground, So if you ever fight a fucking weirdo who just like there's a few Terrans who do this, and I've coached a few of them recently, who are like so focused on the air battle meta, they like don't have any solid ground army. And you're like, wait a second, this loses to just me having Marines and Marauders and Medevacs. Those players, the ground style is really, really good. But basically, the idea with the ground style is we want 12 plus barracks, 5 plus bases, like 80 SEVs, and non-stop Medevac production. We never actually fight in the Viking War, because we just want to be able to heal our units, pick up and doom drop, split drops off. They will die a lot. And the thing is, if you ever win a fight, we've seen what happens to Vikings if suddenly the ground army's gone and there's still 20 Marines left. Every Viking will just get snapped in an instant, right? So the moment you win one fight, their air advantage goes to shit, which is nice. So there is always a chance to eventually swap into air off the ground style. But essentially, it's like, any trade is a good trade. Lots of diving YOLO drops, as I call them, straight over turret lines and stuff. Basically you say, well, I'll lose the first 2 medevacs and the next 4 will get in and unload. And because their army's so far away, I know I'll kill a whole bunch of production. And my most recent addition, my most recent special spicy sauce to this style nukes. If you're going a heavy bio style, nukes are so good against a mech player because you got this army where you're kind of like trying to zerg them, right? Like if you come in with a big flank and like even a quarter of their tanks are on siege, sometimes you can just annihilate their army just because you've got so much Marine Marauder. If you attack them all from one angle, they're all sieged up, your army is absolute trash and you'll kill like 2 tanks and 10 Hellbats or something like that, and for your entire maxed army, right? So like there's this real thing where your opponent knows that and they're very careful about how they set up their army and they really don't want to get caught unsieged, right? And because of that, they're very immobile, which means starting to launch nukes can force them to unsiege. They can get overeager, kind of A-moving unsiege tanks and Hellbats into ghosts. You can cancel the nuke and just stim on them. You can just start forcing big reactions all over the place, which opens up more opportunities for you to dive these drops through, you know, and just start finding angles, you know, or finding tanks without air support guarding them, and you go and drop marauders on top of the tanks and that sort of stuff. So that's the ground style. I used to only play that style. So that style is really cool. Best verse players who focus too much on air, you know, Mines, Thors, Mass Viking, Raven, that sort of, not enough tanks, those sort of players. But you can do it versus anything. Now, the air style is what we're seeing here from Kelazur, and it's the exact opposite, right? So with that style, there is no Vikings. It's only medevacs. With this Kelazur style, there is almost no medevacs. He'll occasionally build a couple just to heal up his stemmed bio. But you're going to notice in these engagements we've been watching in this game, he never really engages with his bio. It's like the bio is just sitting there, and if the enemy army is unsieged, he will fight it, but he will never engage into the sieged bio, into siege mech. He will be like, oh, if you try to attack through my lib zones and my Vikings, then I will use my bio. But otherwise, he's like, nope, this units are just there for the threat of bio, but I know I don't have great upgrades. I don't actually have that much production on them. They're there just to punish you if you start trying to pick away at the edges with Cyclones and Thors and that sort of stuff. Like the bio's just there to capitalize on the openings that the air advantage leverages. And likewise, we don't fight with them at all. We're very careful with our bio. It's always sitting behind his air army. And we just look to absolutely dominate the air war as much as possible. So what do? We reprioritize gas. Reprioritize gas into pure air. Second starport and third starport with Tech Lab for lib range. If you really want, you could technically go battle cruisers. I think lib range is better until much later in the game. Battle cruisers can get really good, but libs are just the better unit due to their range in most scenarios, and there's a simpler way of using them. The battle cruisers are going to be much slower to win a game. Second starport, third starport with Tech Lab for lib range. Double armory for air upgrades. Delay second eBay and extra fourth plus barracks for all of this. So what are your
how much
thoughts?
gas would you? Sorry, how much gases would you recommend going for? Like 4 bases and like every gas, or?
Yeah, basically as much gas as you can. So yeah, you'll basically take gas as quickly as possible with this style.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll keep expanding as much as you can, as always in an anti-mech game. Obviously, you're not going to just like rush to 5 bases or something. You might take your 4th a little bit earlier than normal. But yeah. I guess like if we had to think of it, what we would say is like second and start, delay second eBay and 4th racks for all of that. We might want to get a 4th CC even before we go back into more barracks and stuff. 4th CC before extra racks and second eBay, question mark. I think that would be a nice thing. I'm adding the question mark because I think it's partly up to, you know, how you want to play it, but definitely could work out pretty well. But yeah, this was just such a nice style here from Kelazur, and you see so many fights in this VOD. That's what I really loved about this game, is like, I was like, you get to see so many of these interesting air army fights, and you see the bio always like run away from the fight and be like, let's let the Vikings and the Libs deal with this. And even though there's so many close fights, and Hero Marine really does fight it very well, but in the end, Kelazur kind of wears him down such a close game. Hero Marine's one of the best best to every race players, up there with Scarlet and Raynor and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he likes to claim quite a lot.
Yeah, Hero Marine's also the player who is probably 1,000 times better at using this air army than Kelazur. No offense to Kelazur. But if there's like one guy who's happy to just patiently sit there and win the air superiority battle every TvT, it's Hero Marine. I remember watching him at Katowice, and it's just so funny to watch a guy just be happy to be like down a base all game in a TvT. And these like Korean Terrans like, I'm fucking him up. And Hero Marine's just so unfazed. He's like, I have more Vikings and tanks than you. He's like, I'm winning. And Terran's like, I'm up 15 workers in a base. And Hero Marine's like, really? You think that matters? You look at the units lost, and every game he's so far ahead in the units lost. And you're like, what the fuck? Hero Marine just doesn't lose engagements. Like, he's such a good defensive player, and he's so happy to just sit in his corner of the map and just like eventually win the big fight that matters. So Hero Marine's a great player to study for those perfect engages. But yeah, this is a cool style. So do you reckon you'd probably just focus on the air style, I imagine?
Yeah, just because I don't like to engage in each tank.
Yeah.
Like you need to split very well. I'm not good. Like splitting against siege tanks is way different than against banelings and storm.
Well, it's all before the fight. You don't do it during the fight. You can do a little bit, but like it's all like you set up that 4-screen surround, and you're like, please push through here, please push through here. You're like, yes, he's pushing through, and then you just stim A move and you take your hands off the keyboard and mouse and you go, all right, please do it. And if you set it up right, it's amazing. So yeah, I'll link this VOD as well for people in chat. Sorry guys, I know some of you probably want to see that. That was from the Who is the StarCraft Master. That was the semifinals between Kelazur and Hero Marine. Really good set. Yeah, so I think that's the key thing there. Where if we look at your replay that we looked at, ignoring the fight, you know that went wrong. You know you could have done that better. But having the better plan, like you go back to like that 6-minute mark or something in the replay, and it's like, okay. Well, not 6 minutes, like probably 7:30 or something like that. And we kind of go, oh, okay, cool. I can see how this would be different. You know, at this point, maybe we already know it's Mech. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's a little bit later. But, you know, maybe we've already gone double engineering bay, and then we just don't use one of them. We're like, oh, actually, let's just use one eBay. Save the gas. You know, you still obviously want to get 3 barracks up first. You need to have some base of production. But then at this point, at this point in the replay, we'd be like, you know what? Oh, it's Mech. Especially like after if you saw the Hellions actually unload from this drop, you'd know 100%. This was so satisfying. Oh, so good. But yeah, you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Second starport. Let's get a tech lab on it and go for a fusion core and go straight for lib range. I think most people would just go second reacted starport, then go for the tech lab starport. It's up to you. Which one do you think you prefer? Going for the really fast range libs or just going... Because I feel like 3 air units at a time is probably enough to start. Kind of depends on your judgment of where you are, though. I feel like building 3 Vikings at a time, I'm going to get ahead in the air pretty quickly. But some people like to really make sure their Viking count's winning, and knowing that lib range isn't really important until a bit later in the game. So I guess technically you probably could open reactor on your second starport and then wait for the third starport to be tech lab with fusion core.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
It depends on how your opponent opens up, I guess. Like if he opens up double Raven and Vikings, it's the same thing, obviously.
Yeah, you've kind of got the same base air unit set, right? So it should be good. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty huge. Just getting practice with that. And then you're actually very patient as well. So you shouldn't feel as rushed to kill them because you have the better army. So in terms of, okay, we've talked about what you're meant to do. You basically just build up your air army and then pick a frontal fight, right? And you just win the air war, siege your shit, right? And then you keep your bio back is the big thing, right? Rather than stimming your bio in at the same time, your bio kind of comes back and says, Mech, come to me. So this should give you that mindset of, you have to come to me. I've got the better army. I'm the Mech player. So even though you're playing bio, you should actually have confidence when you're going straight for that air war dominance to be like, no, your army's worse than mine. You have to do stuff to me. And that's this very liberating feeling. because we're used to as bio players, we're like, I gotta do something, his tank count's getting too high, shit, and we like panic and we take these engagements, and that's, I guess, what the engagement in this game kind of looked like. You know, it was like, oh fuck, there's an opening, let's go for it, you know, but like, you know, we weren't really mentally prepared for it because we weren't really sure. With this, it's like, you can really be like, yeah, I'm waiting, I'm just gonna smash that frontal engagement when it comes. You know, they go for that big maxed out push, and then they're just like, holy shit, this guy just has such a better air army. And, you know, even if they've got a Thor or two in there, you know, if you've got 6 libs or something with range, like 2, you know, you don't really care too much about 2 Thors. And at that point, you can build 5 Liberators at a time. So that's like the crazy thing as well, is like, once you've got the Viking dominance, if you win a Viking fight, you know how much like they never catch up in the Vikings, right? You can just start pumping out. You're like, oh, a minute and a half later, I have 15 Liberators. Liberator harassment as well. Do you use that much in late game TvT?
Nah, in TvT not really.
Dude.
In other matchups I do, but in TvT.
Just think about it. Every time you're playing a TvT, you harass with a Liberator, you're basically like making all the Protoss and Zergs so happy. They're like, yes, make a Terran deal with your fucking bullshit. Like, that's the equivalent of like all the things that make people angry. You know, DT drops, people getting angry about warp prisms and shit. Like Liberators, the ability for this unit to queue up and just fucking annihilate a base, and you add range to it, and it is just hilarious. You can siege up across a turret and like still hit the mineral line, and the turret's just sitting there and not able to do anything. Funnily enough, high sec auto tracking, not high. Is that what's the? Is it high sec? High sec. That's the range upgrade on the turrets. Is it high sec? I think that's high sec. Maybe I'm getting my upgrades confused. That actually makes turrets 1,000 times better versus range libs, funnily enough. Like, the number of times I've sieged up a range lib being like, oh yeah, the turret shouldn't hit it, but it's like a weird mech player who rushes that upgrade and the turret can hit it, and I'm like, what the fuck? But outside of that scenario, yeah, it's amazing. And you'll always find an angle where you can siege up a base. It takes so little APM. So Liberator harass gets pretty insane in the late game as well. Any questions about fighting against Mech, or do you feel like that's... I mean, I think that's obviously something you need to play and start encountering things where your opponent throws weird stuff at you, but anything popping to mind?
Would you recommend going double armory and skipping out like the defense upgrade on infantry?
I would. 100%.
Because, yeah,
I would probably...
So because sorry.
I would probably go like +2 range, like attack. Maybe I would even go 3-0. I was thinking I would probably go like +2 attack on the bio and then just get the armor upgrade on the bio, just because it's like cheap and it takes so much less time. But maybe I would go 3-0 even. Definitely I would go like 2-1 or 3-1 on the bio whilst going double armory.
I'm thinking of something. I'll probably get a reminder when I play a game, like the first game, and I'm gonna lose, and then I'm gonna rage. Probably because it's a new style.
You're on a tilt streak. It's just like, I reckon actually hop in a custom game and practice this transition, because it is very fucking weird. I remember the first few games I tried this, because I was really struggling with Mech when I went through this whole learning process that I just kind of explained to you, right? And the first few games I'm like, cool, yeah, get my second starport. And I'd realize I already have a second engineering bay upgrading and a 4th and 5th barracks with add-ons. So I'm like, when did those go down? Because it's so built into your play. You're like, well, I'm playing bio. I need a second eBay and a 4th and 5th barracks. So actually practicing it in the empty custom game, do that once or twice. Obviously, like 7-minute games, you don't need to go much further than that, just to kind of get down the order of like, wait a second, we're actually delaying our 2nd and 3rd barracks. We're getting the 2nd starport with the reactor, the 3rd starport with the tech lab and the fusion core. We're going double armory while only single upgrade bio upgrades. And just realizing that, yeah, having a few more Marines, Marauders, and the armor upgrades on the bio doesn't really help. Dominating the air with range libs and Vikings makes Mech look kind of shit. Awesome, man. All right. Obviously, you had a tough day on the ladder today. I do like that we got to see that in the games as well. Like, there was a couple of rage quits, but these were awesome. Honestly, like mechanically, you're still looking like a beast. Your APM's insane. But yeah, I think that's really good. We came up with the anti-mech plan, because I feel like Mech is going to be very popular for the next 2 or 3 months in TvT. I'm feeling like people are enjoying it at the moment.
That's a shame.
No more
Playing
versus
versus
bio.
yeah, I don't know. Playing versus Mech, like it draws the game out so long. It's I don't know. I dislike playing it Mech.
You gotta, yeah. I agree, and at the same time, I consciously just make myself enjoy it. Where I'm like, you know what? It's not every day I get to siege libs on top of my opponent's army and shit all over them. So enjoy that. Enjoy that as much as you can. I think it's actually, yeah, it's really fun. So anyway, that was a good little sesh, mate. I don't know when we can set up the next one, right? Because you're normally like, working out of city and stuff, right? So you're only available on the weekends. Maybe just shoot me an email and we can try to find a time for another one. I'm going to be on vacation, holiday in Vietnam in like a week for about a week and a half. But after that, it's probably the best time to set one up. So I guess we can just talk on email and figure something out.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be fall anyways. Like summer is really bad for me, time wise. I don't really have time to spare, so
Get super busy.
yeah, like working up to 17 hours a day.
Damn! Holy shit! All right, time
Yeah.
to start playing co-op and queuing unranked and cheesing people or something like.
Yeah, I should switch to Protoss and Cannon Rush every game. Probably I'll get Masters too.
Hells yeah, man! All right, man. Well, great session. Have a good night. I'll let you get to sleep and have a good day tomorrow, man. I'll see you later.
All right.
Good night, mate.